Let's make the Travis Scott action figure part 1. So I figured this time I'll start from the default base mesh in ZBrush, which honestly was a mistake. In hindsight, I realized how much learning I'm missing out when working with base meshes, and as the sculpture progressed, it became more apparent. I feel like I made sculpting choices that were just wrong, that I might have avoided if I just started from a sphere. I ended up splitting the base mesh into separate limbs and parts, since I'm going to make it into a toy figure thing. I initially was going to recreate the album cover for Rodeo, which, I don't listen to Travis Scott really, but back in 2013, 2014, I used to listen to Owl Pharaoh and mostly to Days Before Rodeo a lot. I mean, I really thought Days Before Rodeo was bringing something revolutionary to the hip-hop world, and I truly knew Travis was going to be an important voice in the game. Then Rodeo came out, and I didn't think I would like it since it wasn't as raw as Days Before Rodeo, but man, it ended up being my possibly favorite project by Travis. After that, I kind of stopped paying attention to him because it just wasn't that intriguing. And 2015 is when I started paying attention to new up-and-comers like Uzi and Kodak Black, Cardi, amongst others, who were just a breath of fresh air. And some of the Slime Season mixtapes and others by Young Thug, which at the time were still super raw and captivating for me. Anyway, I always loved Rodeo ever since, and was super intrigued by that action figure he made because, well, I grew up on those types of action figures and I just think they look so sick, always. So I thought it would be a cool idea, and before recreating the album cover, I figured, I'll make a video dedicated to making the character itself. I think there were a lot of forgiving aspects to the sculpture since it's a toy, so you can get away with a lot of stuff, and yet still throughout the whole project, I kept going back to ZBrush to fix his face because I just wasn't happy with it. And it was really frustrating because it really showed me I have so much more to practice and to learn. And that's why I'll never start from a base mesh again. I just need to focus on really nailing the basics of sculpting, like eyelids and lips and ears and just general proportions and muscle definitions. Fuck, it's like sometimes I just feel like it's just too much to handle, I'm sure you understand. But you just gotta focus on the next step and find ways to keep yourself engaged. Make it fun for yourself so you can forget about how frustrating it is. This video ended up being extremely long, and I didn't want to super speed it up, so I just decided to break it into two parts. The first part would be the modeling, and the second part would be the texturing and getting the braids dynamics and rigging the whole thing. So yeah, if you want to watch me rig and texture, stay tuned for part 2. I really like that you had all these ball and socket type joints that fitted into each other. It was different than most other things I've done. And even though it was super simple, something about the idea behind it was just intriguing and cool and fun. Making toys, man, I just want to make more toys. And I have to say, if you checked out my Instagram, you've probably seen that I haven't uploaded in a long time, but my most recent uploads were all kind of toy-based characters. And man, I'm super fascinated by the world of just generally toys, these kind of 80s, 90s action figures, but even more the concept of bootleg toys. So kind of artists that take existing toys and manipulate them or kind of change them up to create new ideas out of it that are kind of left field or just weird or stuff that no real huge company would dedicate resources to making those characters. I just love that. I really hope that I'll get to a point in my life where I'll be able to kind of do it myself, and I'm not a sculptor. I'm not, I don't know how to do these things in real life, but even maybe through ZBrush, getting better at what I'm doing right now, and then getting to a point where I can 3D print those and then work from there. It's such a romantic idea in my head, and I would love to be able to do it at some point because I have so many ideas for cool figures. And I guess it's about the ideas, but it's also just about making it happen, because everybody's already thought of everything. So it's not just about how unique your idea is. It's more about, how connected you are to that idea and actually executing that idea and making it all happen. So yeah, you can see me kind of like testing the limbs and making sure the sockets are large enough, but not too large to fit the like rotary cups or whatever you call it, just so I can see that the movement is gonna happen okay. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should feel like it should work as a toy. I think the most tricky thing was to get the right balance between something that's detailed, that feels real and doesn't feel like super kind of generic and, you know, lacking, with something that's ultimately a toy, right? It's not an actual person. It's the definition, the muscle definition, if you look at the actual toy, is like, it's very smooth. It's not as defined and super detailed as you would want it to be. And of course, the amount of like micro details is just doesn't exist. But you're kind of walking this fine line between something that should feel like it's not lacking, but also it shouldn't feel like there's so much detail on it that it kind of becomes uncanny. The only thing that really required, I guess, the highest level of details are the pants and the shoes and the boxers, because they're real garments on the toy. That required what I'm kind of already used to about getting to the micro details. Making the shoes, I'm not showing it at all in this video. I made a whole video about it. If you haven't seen it, I uploaded it last week. So I have a whole video dedicated to just making the shoes. So if you want to see how I made them, check it out. Again, there's always that middle moment in the process where you've done enough work and yet it's still looking so bad, and that's the most frustrating moment, because you're like, where is this going? Oh my god, like why isn't it looking good? I think with experience you kind of learn to understand that it's like, no, it's going okay, just like wait, keep sculpting, you know, like it'll get there. But whenever I look back at the video, those moments are when I'm like, wow, this looks bad. This just looks bad. But, you know, towards the end, you kind of finally make it work. And especially stuff like eyelids, man, I really need to work on my eyelid sculpting. Eyelids are so important. You know, they really can make or break your sculpture. That's like the eyes, right? It's like we're so sensitive to the eyes, and the eyelids can either make it look super funky and uncanny and just unpleasant to look at, or can make the character really engaging and just high-end and well sculpted. I can tell you for sure I've struggled the most with the eyelids here, because especially if you're going for somebody specific that you're sculpting, the eyes are just like 50% of what makes them look like them. I think I'm okay with getting the general facial structure and kind of the proportions of the face, but the eyes are so, I mean, they suck. And you know, since this was a toy, it was in a way like, in a way it was more confusing, because the toy, I mean, it doesn't look like Travis Scott. It kind of does, but it's not obviously like a replica of his face. So I kept walking this balance between trying to get this figure to look like Travis Scott, but also trying to get it to look like the toy. That for sure was a struggle for me. And the eyelids are the thing that I went back to the most. Like I kept exporting, texturing, rendering, and then like seeing, oh my god, like this looks horrible, you know? I mean, it looked way better in ZBrush. And then going back to ZBrush and like fixing the eyelids. One thing for sure that I kind of messed up is I use creases to control just like sculpting and deforming and polygrouping and stuff. But the thing is that those creases don't stay in the exported model. So when I subdivide with creases in ZBrush, it keeps a sharp edge. But then when I export it to Cinema 4D and I subdivide it, it doesn't have that edge information there. So it kind of rounds out those edges. So especially in the eyelid, for example, like the eyelid would be kind of crisp and nice in ZBrush, but then when I was subdivided in Cinema, it would just round out and shrink, you know, like what subdivision does. It took me a while to figure it out. So I had to go back, and by that time, I already had all my subdivisions and all my details, so I didn't want to add more edge loops. So yeah, I mean, the level of inexperience is truly showing in those moments where it's like you figure out a problem way too late. By the way, I wonder, do you listen to Travis Scott? Do you like his music? Do you even know who he is? I mean, I guess if you clicked on this video, you kind of know who he is. And I mean, he's, I guess, one of the biggest musicians right now in the past few years. So it makes sense that you would. But I can tell you, for me, as I said in the beginning, I used to listen to Al Faro and Days Before Rodeo a lot in like 2013, 2014. A lot. Like, it was my favorite releases of the time, along with the artists that were releasing music at the time. And I just thought it was like really revolutionary for hip hop. So yeah, for sure, like, I love Rodeo. I absolutely love it. I love Days Before Rodeo. Crazy album, mixtape. Al Faro has some interesting moments in it. I never really paid attention to Astroworld or Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight and all those. Those are kind of like went over my head. I think it was just, they were a bit too polished. I mean, I have this weird thing where I discover an artist, they're still unknown. I love the rawness and the unpolishedness and the kind of the new vibe that they bring, because they're so new and, kind of no strings attached type people who are trying to impress and trying to make themselves noticed and are just bringing their own true vibes. And then, if they blow up and they get on the radio, your music is going to get more polished. Your vision is going to be a bit more skewed towards, I wouldn't say satisfying your viewers, but it definitely plays a part in the back of your head as an artist. Like, there's so many eyes on you now that you're probably not going to be as free to make really experimental decisions. And I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's more rare. So I usually kind of let go of these artists at that point, and I just go back to finding who's the next kind of, or who's the current interesting underground artist. Yeah, and I mean, maybe that sounds like fucking pretentious as fuck, but that's just kind of, I go with what excites me. So I have to say one thing: every collaboration between Travis Scott and Young Thug is always incredible. That last one with MIA and Young Thug and Travis Scott, Franchise, that song Franchise, is so good. I mean, I do go back to it, and the music video is just so good. And I just watched recently The Holy Mountain by Alejandro Jodorowsky, which, if you're into any type of like visual storytelling, you need to watch that movie. It's from the time of like really experimental cinema of like the early 70s, but yeah, visually just insane. And there's a lot of references to that movie in that music video, along with other movies. So yeah, I mean, I would listen to some songs by Travis Scott now, but I'm not as involved as I used to be in 2014. Just let me know, what's your favorite album? What do you listen to? What do you like by Travis Scott? I'm a very musical person. Music is a huge part of my life. So, and I never really get to communicate that in these videos. So maybe that's kind of a nice opportunity to open up that path. And for anybody wondering, because I do get asked that a lot, all the music in my videos are beats that I made over the past 10 years, probably. Like, some of them are older, especially in the beginning of my channel. I used some kind of really old beats of mine that are more left field, kind of post-Dilla type beats, like Madlib inspired type beats. But lately I kind of stopped using them, and I just used stuff I made in the last few years. So in this video, for example, all these beats are from 2017, 2018. And it's just like, I feel like making music and sculpting and designing and making kind of visual art, I mean, it all goes hand in hand. Two sides of the same coin, or even one side of the same coin. So yeah, if you wondered. They're all my beats. I have 2 SoundClouds. I haven't uploaded in years, so you can't really find these beats there, but I do want to upload them because people have been asking me, and I'm surprised by the amount of people. Like, I'm surprised that anybody even asked me that. So that's cool to know, and I will upload them. I will upload them to my SoundCloud, and because they just sit and gather digital dust on my hard drives. So why not just fucking put them out there, you know? At this point of the sculpting the pants, you'll see that they kind of glitch out every now and then. And I was kind of ignoring it, which wasn't a good idea because I just thought that it's just nothing. But there was a point where that glitch just stayed. It just kind of was baked into the model, only at higher subdivisions. I think I accidentally changed vertex count and then re-imported the mesh. So the higher subdivision levels kind of got just completely glitched out, which can happen. But man, it just sucks when it happens after you're done sculpting. So if you see issues like that kind of start to pop up, don't just hope for the best. Like what I did, for example, is I just exported the base mesh. What did I do? I think I exported the base mesh as an OBJ and then re-imported it. So the glitch was kind of gone. But then I had to re-sculpt all the details. So yeah, if you see some kind of glitching out happening, make sure you nip it at the bud and don't keep building on top of that glitch. I mean, I do have to say that updating my ZBrush to 2023, a lot of weird shit started happening after I updated. A lot of weird crashes, just random kind of crashes and glitches. I mean, they did happen in 2022 as well, but the crashes just like are kind of prevalent. Kind of sucks, but... So doing the bases of the braids, I started by masking it out and creating polygroups from it, but that was a mistake. That was just a mistake because I lost those polygroups. I lost the details of those polygroups once I lowered the subdivision levels and then went back to higher. I should have started from the overall hairline and then just masked out the bases of the braids. And then I extracted that to create a new mesh from it, but that was pointless. I just ended up inflating the head mesh and just sculpting on top of that. And the cool thing is that all these details, I created layers for them. So in case I found a better way to do it or just didn't like how it came out, I just remove that layer and I can redo it without destroying the base mesh. The waistband of the boxers was kind of different in the original figure, much more complex, like a complex sewing pattern, but I was just like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, at some point you just gotta know what to do and what not to do. So I just made like this simple waistband. What I did want to do for sure is to have these like hinges inside of the elbows that the original figure has, which is what really kind of makes it rotate. I thought it was a really cool touch. If you like this content and want to support the channel, feel free to check out my Patreon or membership, where you can find these project files, watch these videos with no ads, get free products from the store, as well as other cool perks, but mostly help me make more and better content for y'all. Also, you can buy this model, as well as other material and model packs on my new plastic Gumroad, and also buy prints and pins I made on the Pink Eye Gumroad. And I totally understand that not everyone can support that way, but even subscribing helps the channel, or giving me a follow on Instagram at ojang or the channel at brandnewplastic. And if you want to help build a community, share your work, and just fuck around, join our Discord. I'll leave the link in the description. Either way, I really appreciate you. Here you can see that I don't have the shoes yet. I already had them made at this point, and I was just going to add them to the Cinema 4D project because they're already kind of textured and modeled. But I'm going to add them to the tool itself, so you're going to get, if you want to, you're going to have everything in the tool, including the shoes. And of course, I UV unwrapped everything in Cinema 4D because it's just so much easier to control. It was very simple and very straightforward UV unwrapping. It was probably the easiest and most rewarding unwrapping because the topology was nice and all the shapes were really simple, and it was already kind of broken into all these limbs. So I didn't have any like huge meshes that need to fit in U-dims or whatever. It's just like everything fits in a nice square. Detail I did want to kind of get stuck on and take on was creating the Cuban links chains. One of them was a Cuban link and one of them was just a regular chain link. Creating the Cuban links was pretty straightforward. I just twisted this ring, flattened both sides. I just tried to remesh it as much as I could. I probably would have invested a bit more if it was like just the chain itself, but that wasn't the highlight. It was just like a side thing, so I just tried to do it as quickly and as best as possible, and it ended up looking great. And I just checked that they kind of match on top of each other, created a IMM brush from them, and then I could just draw a curve and they would just fit on the curve. And then, you know, the chain link was really simple, and I tried to keep everything as low poly as possible since, you know, they're going to be multiplied along a curve. But yeah, once I got both of them done, same here, I saved it as an IMM brush. And then I just created the chain curve using Z-spheres, just like I did with the shoelaces in the shoes. Controlling IMM curves is, you know, can be kind of tricky, especially if you're not used to it, as I am not used to it. But the system is pretty well made. Sometimes it can kind of go crazy, but honestly, it wasn't that bad. Then for the pendant, I just ended up drawing the alpha. Took me maybe 10 minutes. And as you can see, every now and then I would go back to the eyelids and just try to fix them. Oh man, that was a bitch. At this point I was like, no, I should add the eyes too, the eyeballs, so I can sculpt the eyelids around the eyes. You know, the eyes are always fun to make. I cut out the black part of the iris here, but I ended up putting like a black iris because it just worked better for a toy look to have like the whole eye there and not cut out the black parts. So at this point I was done. I didn't want to add the braids in ZBrush because I wanted them to be dynamic. So I'll do the braids in the next part. There's definitely a bit more modeling work in the next parts, but the next parts are mostly going to be texturing in Substance Painter and rigging. Anyway, if you want to get the model, you can do it on my Gumroad. You can check out my other Gumroad for prints and pins that I made, and consider supporting on Patreon. You'll get access to this project file as well as other cool perks. You know, watch these videos without ads and everything. And a raging mic grab over the head to all my Utopian patrons and members you see on the screen right now. I love you. Have a great day. Peace.